Good morning, everybody. We have a few minutes to go. This is Alexander Whitetail Feather, and I would like to just hold on until 1 o'clock, and we'll go from there. So thank you for everybody for attending. Could somebody send in a question just to test to see whether or not you're actually hearing me? That would be nice to know. Okay, everybody, it is 1 p.m. here, Denver time, and I would like to thank everybody for showing up and participating in our webinar here on undetectable equals untransmittable. First, I would like to ask that everybody send prayers, good thoughts, energy to all of the people in Northern California and to the Native people who are living there in Santa Rosa due to the fires, and when the time comes to donate to a legitimate organization. With that, I am Alex Whitetail Feather. I'm the Executive Director for the National Native American AIDS Prevention Center in Denver, Colorado. I'm a member of the Kashaya Band of Pomo Indians, which is near Santa Rosa in California. And today we have a guest. Our guest speaker is Mr. Bruce Richmond, who is not Native, but NAPC believes that this information and this movement is important and should be available for all Native people to be able to access. And so with that, thank you, Bruce.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to be here. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be invited, and look forward to sharing this information with you and the participants.
You're welcome. Thank you. And our interviewer today is going to be Mr. John Tenorio, who is a member of the Southern Ute Tribe in Colorado. And he is a member of the Board of Directors for the National Native American AIDS Prevention Center. And so with that, I will turn it over to John.
Well, thank you, Alexander. And good afternoon, Bruce. Thank you for joining us. I'm real excited that you're here today. This afternoon, this webinar is part of NNAPC's dialogue, which addresses the unspoken HIV stigma for Native people. HIV stigma is the #1 barrier preventing Native people from seeking HIV testing, education, treatment, and service. Introduce U equals U to the Native community. There are a few questions that are important to the Native community, and I think there's nobody better person to answer these questions than you, Bruce. So I really want to thank you for being here today. Our first thing is we'd like you to explain, what is an undetectable viral load and what is viral load suppression?
Well, thanks, John. So I think the first slide I have here, it goes over what an undetectable viral load is and what being virally suppressed means. Let me just make sure I have. Can you see the slides okay? Okay, good. So the first slide is undetectable viral load really depends on test, but it means when someone is taking antiretroviral medication and the virus has been suppressed by that medication, so it's so low in the body that you can't find the virus. It doesn't mean someone's cured, but it means that it's so low that it's not even possible to measure it, and that depends on the number of copies per milliliter, the number of that is used to measure. It really depends on the test. So in the United States, it's usually around under 40 copies, around about 40 copies. So then viral suppression, which you might also hear, is still a really close number. That's under 200 copies per milliliter. So there's a range in between. But on the next slide, you can see that there. Oops, sorry, that's going by fast. That in many ways that they are interchangeable. Sometimes they're used interchangeably. And I'll go over this next slide more in a minute after your next question.
Okay, Bruce, what is the risk of HIV transmission when someone is on ART and has an undetectable viral load?
So the risk of transmission, this is where the campaign comes in. Undetectable is untransmittable. So when you're undetectable and you're on treatment, your virus is untransmittable. And that's also, it's also the same for when you're virally suppressed. So when you're under 200 copies per milliliter and you're virally suppressed, you also cannot transmit HIV through sex. But again, as I mentioned earlier, many people use undetectable and viral suppression as one and the same. So someone could be, their viral load test could come back at 180, 150, even, to 199, and they're still not able to transmit HIV. So they're still covered under U equals U.
Do you want to take a second and let people know what ART is?
Oh, yeah, sorry. ART, antiretroviral therapy, is the medications that people take. It started back in 1996, and it was really known then more as cocktail therapy. So it's a combination of medications that will help people reduce the virus in their system so that they can live healthier lives. And if it's reduced all the way down to undetectable or virally suppressed, not only they'll live healthier lives, but also won't be able to transmit the virus to our partners. And usually it's a one-a-day pill, depending on where people are living. But the medications are much more tolerable now than they were when they started. Certainly, back in the late 90s.
Great, Bruce. Okay, my next question is, how do we know there is effectively no risk?
That is a good question. Well, first we know because the agencies and the greatest minds in science have determined that. So the CDC back on September 27th, just recently issued a statement, it was called a Dear Colleague letter to others in the field of infectious disease and in medicine, that it's just what we said earlier, that if you're on antiretroviral therapy and you take it daily, you take it as prescribed, that you keep an undetectable viral load, you have effectively no risk. So you can't really get higher than the CDC in terms of the scientific review of the research and the legitimacy of the message. And the research was based on a bunch of different studies. Won't go into them in depth here, but the first time that anyone put in writing that someone who was undetectable could not transmit HIV to their partners was in 2008, and it was called the Swiss Statement. And then it wasn't actually a trial, where you had people being studied in a clinical trial. It was a statement based on the non-observation of any incident. So no one in the history of having this medicine has transmitted HIV if they are undetectable. That's what the Swiss statement had based it on. And then there were these 3 big studies. Well, HPTN and a partner were the big studies you've probably heard about. There's some people who work in the field and follow this, where there were no transmissions between people who were positive and people who were negative. The partner study showed that there were 58,000 sex acts without condoms and no transmission between HIV positive and HIV negative people. The opposite attract study showed there were 17,000 sex acts without condoms. About 5,000 the partners were on PrEP, so it was really about 12,000 acts without any kind of protection except for somebody's HIV treatment, and there were no transmissions between people who were living with HIV and who were their HIV negative partners.
Great. I have another question that's very important, and I'm sure you have some great answers for us. Does everybody participating in HIV treatment have an undetectable viral load?
Yes, that's a good question. No, no, they don't. So it's, sorry about these slides, they're going a little crazy. So we're at a really exciting moment where we knew that, in 1996, we knew the treatment would save our lives, and now we know that treatment means we can't pass on HIV to our partners. But the issue is now that we have to address is the third U, which is unequal. Unequal access to treatment, unequal access to care, unequal access to viral load testing. So some people are not able to achieve and maintain an undetectable viral load because of circumstances outside of their control, structural issues like poverty and unemployment, institutional racism, and all sorts of paternalism and homophobia and transphobia. So there's all sorts of issues that need to be addressed in order to make sure people have the treatment, the care, and viral load testing to get to undetectable and stay undetectable. So that's one reason. And then other reasons, other people are not, aren't reaching undetectable status because of issues around treatment, whether it's tolerating the side effects or other issues of not finding the right treatment regimen. But most people who do have access to treatment and have the support services to stay on treatment get to an undetectable viral load.
Wow, that sounds great. Another big question in this is, how often should viral load testing be done?
I mean, that's something that people should speak to their doctors about, but typically the guidelines are when someone is starting treatment and is kind of on the way to viral suppression and just sort of it's 3 to 6 months. But once someone is durably virally suppressed, meaning they've been virally suppressed over a period of time and they haven't had any kind of evidence of treatment failure or issues with adherence, not being adherent, then the guidelines are more like 6 months to a year. But I'd say people should really talk to their doctor about it. It's really based on your circumstances. If someone is having trouble with adherence, then they really should have viral load testing more frequently.
Okay, I have another. What do I need to do to maintain an undetectable viral load?
Well, the main thing is take your medication. Take your medication daily. Medication only works if you take it, and so that's really the key is adherence. And some people say the word compliance, which I don't love that word, but so it's really take it every day as prescribed. Stay in care, and get your viral load test done regularly. But the one thing that people often say is you're only as good as your last viral load test, and that's not a helpful thing to say. That's very fear-based. You don't need to worry in between viral load tests. The virus is not going to increase to infectious levels all of a sudden in between viral load tests. It just doesn't do that, And so the main thing is to stay adherent, stay on medication. If you're struggling with adherence, talk to your doctor and try to. There are all kinds of programs to help people with adherence. Like there are even apps for your iPhones and other kind of incentive programs to stay adherent.
Okay, well, here's the question that is extremely important, especially to young people today, because they're hearing lots of different things from different places. Should I stop using condoms and or PrEP if I'm with somebody who is undetectable?
Yes, we do hear that that question a lot, and I think first for condoms, you don't need condoms if you know to prevent HIV if the HIV positive partner is undetectable. But condoms prevent against other STIs and pregnancy, so it's really up to the individual circumstances. And you know, if your partner is having challenges with adherence, they're not taking their medications properly. Again, you know, condoms are a good safeguard to help prevent also HIV. And then there's also, you know, that you and your partner might want to also use condoms, even if you're adherent and you're undetectable and you've been undetectable for a while, and maybe just to have that additional feeling of protection. But it's not medically necessary. And anyone who says it's medically necessary is not following the science. There's usually a lot of judgment around that and sex negativity. But you know, if you're having sex, you know, this seems very obvious, but sometimes it's not. If you're having sex, someone's HIV negative has a HIV positive partner, and they're having sex outside the relationship. That HIV, you know, being with an HIV positive partner who's undetectable isn't going to prevent someone from getting HIV from another partner. So, you know, when you're outside the relationship, that's another thing to look at of using condoms. So it really depends on the sex and the relationship of the two people. And then that's really the same with PrEP. Again, it's not medically necessary for the HIV negative partner to use PrEP. It doesn't add any kind of meaningful extra HIV prevention. But
Hi, John.
Yes.
What is that? That's loud.
Yeah.
That wasn't me.
We have a question from an audience member. The question is, this would be for Bruce. How long does it take to get results for the viral load test?
Oh, the viral load test, I mean, it really depends. I mean, the one that you know, where I get, there's a really expensive one that you can get done very quickly, rapidly. But I get my test back usually in about a week or maybe 10 days. But you know, there may be faster methods to getting it back. But
okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, here's another question that this word's going around a lot, and a lot of people are not sure really what it means, or they don't know that it is involved in the same, you know, in the same thing. What does treatment as prevention mean? So a lot of people, you know, they hear treatment as prevention, but what is the actual meaning of that?
Right, good question. So treatment as prevention is different from U equals U. So treatment, first, U equals U was pioneered by the community, by people living with HIV, and organizations, a lot of organizations around the world use U equals U. They translate it into different languages. It's I equals I in French, and Spanish. It's B equals B in Turkish, and H equals H in Macedonian. So U equals U is really taken up around the world by community members and organizations. And TASP was a concept pioneered by the pioneering Dr. Julio Montaner, who's a researcher in Canada. And it's the foundation of U. It's the something's really loud in the background. Sorry. Is that somebody? You hear that feedback, John? Sounds like a monster.
A little.
Sounds like a. Okay.
A little bit, but.
All right. As long as if you can hear me, okay. Just let me know if you can't, and I'll. So it's the foundation of U view, and it says it's about using treatment, HIV treatment, to lower the risk of transmission, but it doesn't say how much it lowers the risk, and it doesn't say at what level someone's viral load needs to be. So it's a general term, and it's the foundation. It's what the campaign was built on, the concept that HIV treatment can reduce your viral load. But undetectable is untransmittable means it's actually, it gives you the level of viral load, which is undetectable, and it gives you the amount of the reduction of transmission, which means it's untransmittable. So that, you know, they're used in interchangeably, but they're really not the same thing.
Okay, great. Here's another one that comes up quite often, and especially providers have this question, and they're not really sure of this answer, and I think they use it a lot. But does having an STI affect the chances of HIV transmission?
Yeah, I don't have, going forward, I just have this one slide, by the way. But no, it doesn't. There's no evidence to show that having an STI increases the chance of transmission. It may do increase chance of transmission when someone has a detectable viral load, but not when someone is undetectable. The studies showed, like partner studies showed, people did have STIs and it didn't make an impact. So if anyone says that, you maybe ask them, where is the evidence? Is there any evidence that that is actually the case? Because there isn't. So we go by what the evidence shows us, and the studies show there's no evidence of that. Show no evidence of it.
Well, that's great to clear up, because I do hear that a lot, and it makes me think, like, wow, having the flu or having any other incident in your life is going to make you become detectable overnight, and it's like, well, how can that happen? Is that just a scare tactic or what? But I'm glad to have that clarified, because I didn't think that would affect this overnight.
Yeah, and John, I mean, that was what the CDC had on their information page, and they're updating it now. So it's understandable people might think that STIs could have an impact, and there even was some concern about STIs back in 2008. But you know, really, you know, you might see a blip from that. You might see a little bit of an increase, and if someone has a rare disease, you know, there's always a chance if the person who's HIV positive and the person who's HIV negative have some bizarre, you know, rare disease, and it's just a freak incident, and perhaps something like that could happen. But it's not anything that anyone needs to worry about. None of the top scientists or organizations that we work with feel it's anything to worry about, and the CDC doesn't believe it is anything to worry about either. So that's something that can finally be put to bed.
Great. And then as we're mentioning this, can you explain what is a viral blip?
So the viral blip is when the viral load goes up, and it's just one time. It's just a transient blip, and it could be anywhere up to 1,000. But usually that's usually not a problem unless it's not a problem unless it continues over a period of time. And if the viral blip is if there's a pattern and the viral load is going up, then that could mean you need to switch the treatment regimen, and that's something to talk to your doctor about. But if you have a little blip, I had a blip once since 2010 of being, and it was around 180, 200, and my doctor said, don't worry about it. It could also be a problem with the test. There could be a mistake with the test. So it's not something to worry about. There's no viral rebound to infectious levels. Again, it doesn't happen. It's not something for people to be concerned about or worried about. It's very durable. Being undetectable is what doctors call that durable. Researchers call it durable, which means it's lasting. If you take your medication every day, it's going to stay undetectable.
Wow, great. A lot of the stuff, I'm really glad to get this clear, for people to know, because a lot of times there's not a place for people to really go and ask these questions and clarify. Here's a question that is really concerning for especially young people again, and I don't want to keep just saying this is only important for young people, but it is something that's very concerning in the communities. What does being undetectable mean for reproductive health, especially concerning pregnancy and breastfeeding? I know that's a huge thing that just everyone's talking about and everyone's concerned about at one time or another.
Oops, sorry. Do you see my screen now? What just happened?
Yeah, there's a lot of screens open.
Sorry about that. It just somehow goes back to my. All right. So yeah, that's a really important question, and it's an area that needs more research. Unfortunately, there isn't enough research about breastfeeding at this point, and reproductive health. I mean, the concept, what I've heard, actually, we just started canvassing reproductive health specialists and HIV specialists around the issue of pregnancy, and if someone is having a child who's HIV positive, if a mother's having a child and is undetectable through the period from conception until the birth, most doctors feel there's no risk. I think the current thing is current risk level is under 1% risk, but what we're hearing from doctors is there's no risk. But there isn't a consensus statement. There's not the research, sort of enough research perhaps, but we are looking at potentially doing a consensus statement with Hive, which is the reproductive specialist that in health and HIV specialists that we work with. So that there needs to be more in that category. And breastfeeding is the same thing, where specialists feel that the risk is extremely low or non-existent, and there just isn't enough research here in the U.S. So there isn't a real consensus on that.
Well, that's good to know.
One thing I should mention though, but in terms of conceiving a child beyond just vertical transmission, which is in vitro, in the womb, passing it to a child, but a couple can actually conceive a child without any kind of sperm washing or prep or timing with ovulation. You don't need any kind of additional protection measures when you're conceiving a child other than someone's undetectable status. So that's actually really big news for people, that that they can have babies and just conceive without doing anything other than just taking the medicine that you take every day to stay healthy.
Well, that is great to clear that up. I remember hearing a lot of talk around, I'm going to have this done, the sperm washing or whatever, to have a child, and so obviously people were spending a lot of money to do this when they didn't need to, but it's good to know that it's not necessary. Here's a question that this is just like opening up another whole can of worms, and I hope you can elaborate on this. Because there's so much stigma here. There's so many different ways we can go in this question. So I hope it's not like just totally overwhelming. But what does HIV status need to be disclosed?
There's so many angles to approach that. One is ethically. Do you have an ethical responsibility to disclose your HIV status when you're not putting your partner at risk? My opinion is no. I don't think there's any moral obligation to disclose to someone when you're not putting them at risk. From a relationship standpoint, it might make sense to do that because your partner might feel deceived in some way, or might feel that a lack of trust. You never really know. I mean, I've always felt that it was important to disclose because I didn't want any kind of backlash afterwards. So that really depends on the person and the circumstances, but I don't think there's any moral obligation. I think from a relationship standpoint, it's something to consider. Then from a legal standpoint is really where it's the most important, because there's still 33 states where HIV is a crime, and there are disclosure laws, like in places like Indiana, where when someone is diagnosed with HIV, they need to sign a statement to say that they will disclose to their sexual partners. And so it's really important to know what the laws are in your state, and if there are disclosure laws, make sure that you take precautions, like go to your doctor with your potential sex partner, or which is hard to do sometimes, especially when it's online, or make sure there's a trail in your text messages that you have disclosed, or on one of the dating apps. Or have them sign a piece of paper. But they're really good crim modernization organizations that can help. I mean, there's the HIV modernization movement in Indiana. There's Zero Project and the Center for HIV Law and Policy. I think they're both based in New York, and do national work on this, and have the resources to make sure people know about disclosure laws in their states, and make sure they can protect themselves from these horrible laws that are just demeaning and also bad for public health overall. They do nothing to advance ending the epidemic. They only stigmatize us and make people go into the closet about their status, afraid to get tested. So I'd send people to those sites, those websites: Zero Project, Center for HIV Law and Policy, and the HIV Modernization Movement are all really good resources.
Great. I know this. Even this week, California's in the news big that they finally passed. Did some work on their law and changed it, which is a huge step forward. Colorado, Iowa. So we've came a long way. We've came a long way in 10 years, and I think it's only going to get better. And I know people can get involved. There's places for people to get involved. They can join that. They can join this movement. They can, the Zero Project, PWN, if they're concerned, to help in their own state. So there's lots of different options here. Right now, I can't see the questions, but I'm sure we have some questions. So let's open up. Alex, you might have to be helping me because I can't see the questions here. Do we have questions? We have some time here, so we can start taking questions.
Yes, there was a question, and it said, so we received HIV instructor training from the Minnesota AIDS Project in 2014. At that time, we were taught that even if there were undetectable levels, it was still possible to become infected through unprotected sex, which we teach to the community. My question is, who or which HIV/AIDS organizations utilize U equals U?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, so this, just to step back, this webinar was really just based on questions, more, really about content. But the campaign, we have a lot that we could present on the campaign itself. But we have over 400 organizations in 59 countries, about to be 60 countries. The next country is Vietnam. But these are organizations like AIDS United, NMAC, NASTAD, Housing Works, the Latino Commission on AIDS. Let's see, there's some Black AIDS Institute. There are, and most importantly is we have public health bodies. We have the New York State Department of Health, Michigan State Department of Health just signed on, New York City Department of Health and Mental Hygiene, Chicago Department of Health, Washington D.C. Department of Health. So it's really, it's really legitimate. It is the truth, and and groups that are teaching anything otherwise just need to come to our website, and there are plenty of resources.
Hang on, Aaron. I had to call. I'm not online. I'm on the phone call.
I'm sorry. Was that a question?
I don't know.
No.
Why? What am I supposed to
Hi,
do?
Jake.
How do I mute it? Well, how do I
Dave,
mute
we
it?
can hear you.
I don't know what you mean.
Jade, can you hang up and I'll call you back?
Oh, that wasn't me. That was someone else.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I was saying is, I think if anyone, I think what's important is if anyone has questions and wants to, is being told or has sort of old curriculum on what to teach about what it means to be undetectable and what the risk is that they can come to our website, and I have it on the screen right now. I hope it's still there, u=u.org, and there are so many resources, and you really will see the top experts like Dr. Anthony Fauci saying that we do have the science to verify and validate that U=U, and Julio Montaner, who created treatment as prevention, as I mentioned earlier, is also confirming that the global scientific community is confirming U=U. So UNAIDS has even issued an explainer saying that people living with HIV do not transmit HIV when they're undetectable. So it is real. There's plenty of resources to start sharing it with people, and we really hope you do, because most people still don't know. It's still the big secret in the field, and we have to keep talking about it, using our platforms, whatever kind of platform we have, to share the information with people. So please come to our website. There are lots of resources, great resources, videos and handouts and articles.
Thank you, Bruce. We have a little under 10 minutes left, and there's another question. And this is about viral load. Viral load tests every 3 to 6 months or 6 months to a year. You said both. I'm not clear which situations apply to each interval.
So when someone, and there isn't a clear-cut definition, but while someone is on the way to viral suppression, so maybe the first year, 2 years, 3 to 6 months. But once someone is stably, or someone is durably virally suppressed and there are no adherence issues, and your doctor feels that you're taking your medication properly and it's the right treatment regimen, then it can move to 6 months to a year. Like I get tested once a year. But also, if people are using this for their only means of HIV prevention, then maybe they'd want to be tested, every 6 months. The CDC hasn't come out with those guidelines yet or HHS, I should say. It's the HHS would come from HHS. But if someone's using this as their HIV prevention method, then maybe they would want to get viral load tests more, like maybe every 6 months, once they're durably virally suppressed. But I do it once a year. And then, but I should say, in the beginning, in the first 2 years, I got tested every 3 months. I just wanted to make sure I was okay, and my doctor was just advised every 3 to 4 months.
John, do you have any feedback?
No, I think I was going to say I think that's always good to be more often than 6 months, or more often than every 3. A lot of people used to go by the CD4 count, and now it's just almost always recommended to go by detectable or undetectable. And some people weren't comfortable with that, but really this shows that there's no need for anything more as long as you know. Because a lot of times, in the past, people would say, "Oh, this is my count," but anymore, I think as long as it's undetectable, that's the most important thing. That's just kind of what I want to add. What did you feel about that, Bruce?
Yeah, I agree. The viral load is a better indicator of health, and I think that's why viral load testing is so important, and especially there are places where the it's really difficult to get someone's viral load tested if they don't have the diagnostics for that. And so there's a movement, and we actually work with an advocacy group called International Treatment Preparedness Coalition that to focus on helping people to get the viral load testing and get the diagnostics they need, rather than CD4 testing, because it's a better indicator of health and also how infectious someone might be.
Great. Well, I just want to encourage people to look us up. Look up NAPC's website. Look up the u=u.org. There's always these questions that can be answered by all these organizations. Most large organizations are on board with this, but we will always answer these questions for you, and Bruce will always answer these questions. There's Facebook pages. Bruce has a Facebook page. You want to talk a little bit about your Facebook page, how they can find it?
Oh yeah, so it's U=U. Just spell out equals, and it's a group page. It's a really active group, and just invite yourself to the group, and we'll accept you. It's U, and then you spell out equals, EQUALS, U. It should be on the screen right now. And we hope to see you there.
Well, Bruce, I want to thank you so much for being here today and taking this time with us this week. And I'm hoping that we enlighten people, and they can feel free to ask us questions. And if they have, either if they agree with us or don't agree with us, we usually, I know you have the answers, usually pretty much have the answers. And there's places for people to look it up too. So this is one of the best, I think this is one of the best things that's happened in the industry in 10 years. So it's new, and I hope people will be on board with it. And then we have, you have the proof showing that it works. So we're just really glad that you're here today. And I want to thank you.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. Anytime. I'm happy to be here. It was an honor.
This is Alex again, and we have one last question, and this is I think an important question. And after that, then we're shaving it close to our time here. And the question is, do you feel like this, I think U=U, create stigma for people with detectable viral loads or who struggle to reach undetectable viral loads? If so, what are ways to address that?
Oh, could you repeat that? It sort of went in and out. It was about people who can achieve and can't achieve?
Do you feel like U=U creates stigma for people with detectable viral loads or who struggle to reach undetectable viral loads? If so, what are ways to address that?
Absolutely, it could create stigma. Absolutely, and it really depends. I mean, it's really, people need to be careful in the way that they talk about it, and it's no one should be shamed at any level of viral load, and everyone, regardless of viral load, whether you have an undetectable or detectable level of viral load, can have healthy and safe sex. This is just one other way to prevent HIV. People who have detectable viral loads, there's condoms. In some parts of the world, there's PrEP. So it really, every different kind of status in the HIV field and outside, people can stigmatize each other, and they will stigmatize each other. And it's just, we have to be very careful of that. It doesn't, in the way that we talk about it. I think that, our campaign, we always try to make it a priority to talk about the third U, which was in our presentation, as unequal access, and to use this information as an advocacy point in helping to get access to treatment and care and services. Because if we just celebrate U=U, and we just celebrate, and we have reason to, believe me, I'm not saying we shouldn't celebrate it, but if we're only celebrating this and we're not helping the people who can't get access to treatment and don't have viral load testing and diagnostics, then shame on us. And so I think what we need to do is make sure that treatment advocates, which is what we're doing with ITPC Global, are know what U equals U means, and whatever way they want to say it. If they don't want to say U equals U, but they need to say that treatment, getting everyone access to treatment and the care that we need and the services that we need to stay undetectable is the way to end the epidemic. It's the most effective strategy, not only to improve our lives, because it greatly improves our lives to become undetectable. It means we're healthier. It means we're free of fear and the shame of transmission, but it also stops new transmission. So there has to be an investment in that. There has to be, we hope we'll see a surge in access to treatment and a surge in access to all the kinds of services that people need to stay undetectable. So it's a great question, and it's very important. It's all about the third U, and we need to continue to make that a priority as much as getting this information out just to people who are undetectable. It's a big point, a big issue of ours. And again, ITPC Global, International Treatment Preparedness Coalition, is an expert in that area. I don't think there's anyone better in the world to be working with us to make sure that people are trained to use this in their advocacy for access. And so we're not leaving anyone behind, and we're not shaming anyone, and that everyone has the option to get to undetectable if they choose.
Okay. Before we head out and before we leave, I wanted to give everybody some statistics about American Indians and what this movement can mean for American Indians and Alaska Natives. So the most recent CDC HIV surveillance report that's on the CDC website talks about survival rates for the years 2006 to 2011. And the rate of survival from receiving an HIV diagnosis for the first 12 months was 92%. Now that may sound that's a high number, 92%. But what that means is that during that time period, 75 American Indians and Alaska Natives died. And this is 2006 to 2011. And we have the shortest survival rates out of any other race. And what that means is we are either, one, we get the diagnosis, but for whatever reason, we're not able to sustain treatment. We may not be able to access treatment any longer. There are other factors such as poverty, crime. Living in a Native community is in and of itself, you're statistically higher to undergo some of these events. So the rate should be watched. We, as a community of American Indians, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiians, we should keep track of this. And U equals U is a way for someone who may not have access to a clinic all the time, or to have access to an HIV specialist doctor. But they can take this information to their provider. They can take this information to whomever they see and say, see, this is how it works. I'm not, just because I'm living with HIV does not mean, and John and Bruce, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, just because I'm living with HIV does not mean that I'm going to infect you. And that thought process of helps build self-esteem, which I think is also a part of why a lot of people do not seek treatment, or they've gotten their diagnosis and they just are not going to go back. Sometimes I've often said this, that many Native communities, it's like a it's like the 80s again. There's rampant homophobia. HIV is still considered the gay disease, and this is what I want as many people to know about, that the science of treatment, that the society's perceptions of people who are living with HIV has undergone serious change. And so I'm hoping that this number can be lowered, that in years to come, in the next set of years that they analyze, that it's zero. That's what I would like to see. And these types of movements, U equals U, and other efforts, that we can achieve that. We can make that happen. And so that's how I see U equals U connecting to American Indians and Alaskan Natives. And with that, we are over time. And so I would like to thank everybody. Please email me if you have questions. Email Bruce, visit our websites. And thank you to Bruce. Thank you, John. Everybody have a great day. And thank you. Bye.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Alex.
Alex.